Welcome back to Secret Weapons. My name is Mark Johnston. If this is your first time here, this is a YouTube channel where we do gear demos and reviews, as well as studio tips and tricks for leveling up your writing, playing, and production from the perspective of a guitar player working out of a studio. If that's the kind of thing that would appeal to you, please hit that subscribe button and stick around for future videos. Today, we are taking a look at the Diamond Effects Memory Lane Delay. So fellow elder millennial guitar players on up will probably recognize Diamond as one of the forebears of the modern boutique guitar pedal industry. They were a company that was really doing the boutique thing and making big waves before most of the companies that we play today even existed. Diamond actually went under a couple of years back, but as they were closing their doors, fellow Canadian brand Solid Gold Effects actually bought Diamond and everything that goes with it and revived the brand. In the legacy of OG Diamond pedals, there's a couple kind of hallmark standout pieces of gear that you still see on pedal boards and that you still see people gravitate towards. Things like the Diamond compressor, things like their tremolo, and possibly most notably the memory lane analog delay. There's a couple different versions of that delay over the years, a few revisions, as well as a memory lane junior, which was a digital delay sporting analog tonality. And this new Diamond memory lane follows in that lineage, but with a couple of interesting twists. So at the outset, it's important to know as you kind of go into this, this is not an analog delay. This is in fact a digital delay, kind of emulating BBD chip style sounds, but once again in a digital format. And while that may be a no-go for some people when it comes to the legacy and lineage of the memory lane, what that affords Diamond to do with this particular device is actually quite interesting. You have your very straightforward and expected control set on here. A bypass switch, a tap tempo, mix, feedback, delay, time, and modulation. But because you're operating with a digital delay here, the delay time goes up to 2.4 seconds, which is a lot longer than you would be able to get kind of usable, clean delay sounds from an analog delay from actual Bucket Brigade chips. And beyond that, you've also got a couple additional things that are really interesting in here. You have a little toggle switch in the middle that isn't a 3-position, but instead clicks down and clicks up. If you click up, it cycles through 3 different tap tempo subdivisions: quarter, dotted eighth, and half note. And if you toggle down, it takes you through different modes in this thing. Mode number 1, green mode, is going to be memory lane junior, the kind of OG sound from the small format version of the memory lane. Clicking down again will take you into vintage mode, which will not only be kind of grittier, lower fi delay repeats, more emulating of proper Bucket Brigade delay chips, but also the difference between those two sounds is going to be the inclusion of pitch bending and kind of warping effects when you change either your delay time or tap in new tempos. In memory lane junior mode, it's going to silence those repeats so that you don't get any kind of pitch jumps and warble when making changes. In vintage mode and the other 2 modes that we'll touch on, it's going to give you those classic kind of sweeps and warbles and instabilities when tapping in tempos. Below that, you have a red mode and a flashing red mode, and those are going to be a 2-head galloping dual delay and a 3-head ambient delay that is going to basically diffuse out into something similar to tile room reverb, but with more of an eye towards delay, if that makes sense. On top of all of that, you also have a double mode on the right foot switch, which will allow you to press and hold to access a kind of double speed sound that can either be used to half the delay time in memory lane junior mode or to offer up octave pitch jumps up and down in the other 3 modes. It's an interesting new take from the folks over at Solid Gold and Diamond when it comes to the new memory lane. It takes cues from both memory lane junior while also still kind of paying homage to the sound of the old analog delays, even if this is not properly analog itself. But as you heard on that intro track, it still offers up a lot of presence and grit and body when arranging for a song. That 2.5 seconds of delay time is always a welcomed inclusion, with an interesting ability to have that in terms of accessible delay time on the knob if you want just a little bit more fine-tuning control over the first half of that delay speed. So there's a lot packed into this simple looking delay. It's a little bit surprising how much is under the hood here. So I think it's best if we just get it plugged back in. So let's go ahead, plug this thing back in, run it through our amplifier, and put it through its paces. So as always, before we get into our sound samples, let's talk through our signal chain and the context we're working in. I am playing my Fender 52 reissue Telecaster directly into the Diamond memory lane. We're running into my amplifier, which today is the Morgan PR12, a Princeton-style amplifier, mic'd up with a dynamic microphone, running into the Soyuz Lakeside analog preamp. This is what our dry tone sounds like. So we're going to go ahead and run through all the kind of basic controls on the memory lane. But before we get into that, I want to walk through how to kind of navigate this pedal, because there are some tricks up its sleeve that we discussed earlier. Because aside from the obvious controls, mix, feedback, delay time, and modulation, there is that center three position that clicks up and clicks down to change some key modes. By clicking down on it, you can change the mode the delay operates in. And by clicking up on it, you can change your tap tempo subdivision. Clicking up to cycle between green for quarter note, yellow for dotted eighth, and red for half note. We're going to do some kind of initial configuration stuff just for kind of walking through sound samples broadly, and then we'll circle back around and listen to each of the modes towards the end. So let's jump over to the eighth note really quick. And now let's go ahead and engage the pedal so you can see the left foot switch lighting up green to indicate that we are in memory lane junior mode. So the green foot switch indicates memory lane junior, which basically is going to be the kind of cleanest, most digital sounding of the delay modes in here. A mode that is not going to really degrade in that kind of classic BBD fashion, and is also one that when you change your tap tempo or adjust your delay time on the knob, it's going to mute your signal, which will basically just prevent you from getting those kind of like pitch warbles and fluctuations of changing the kind of time value of a BBD chip. Let's give that a listen. But by stepping down, we can move from that kind of memory lane junior mode into a yellow vintage mode, or into a red galloping 2-head mode, and a red flashing ambient 3-head mode. We're going to just jump to yellow for these sound samples, and then, like I said, we'll circle back around and we'll walk through the rest of the modes kind of towards the end. As you can hear, this mode operates a little bit more like your kind of conventional analog delay, which this does seek to emulate. So we're going to hang out in yellow mode for the majority of these sound samples. Let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the kind of min-max of that delay range from borderline unity, giving us kind of chorusing effects with that modulation control, all the way down through about 2.5 seconds. Let's go ahead and take a look at that feedback range. As you can hear, there is no runaway oscillation in here. And as we will touch on later, that right foot switch is a doubler mode, not a kind of like self-oscillating hold switch like a lot of delay pedals tend to implement. And so you're not going to get runaway oscillations here, but you will get these kind of like nice, long, wandering ambient beds, which will also be really handy as we get into the other modes in this device. Let's take a quick look at that mix knob. Worth noting that mix does not go full wet and there is no kill dry on the memory lane. But you will get repeats that kind of outgain your signal by quite a bit, which can be nice if you're building those big ambient beds. Again, great for building those ambient beds, especially if you want your dry guitar to kind of not take center stage. Those pitch bends are always satisfying. Let's go ahead and take a look at this modulation control, both in the context of those really like low speed chorus sounds and for kind of big swirling ambient beds. Just for fun, let's crank up our amp's reverb and really let that be lush. And of course, we have our tap tempo that allows us to kind of cycle between quarter note, dotted eighth note, and a half note, which is a nice inclusion. Okay, let's go ahead and walk through the different modes and really give each of them the time of day where we give a listen to the way they degrade as they get longer, as well as the kind of subtle differences between the modulation implementation across all four modes. We'll kind of cycle all the way back around to green for Memory Lane Junior, give another brief listen to yellow vintage mode, and then we'll get into that red galloping mode with 2 delay heads and that red flashing ambient 3-head delay. context, this is with absolutely no reverb, with a dynamic microphone with no room mic. So very dry guitar. And one final thing that I want to touch on in this video is that tap tempo control can also be used as a doubler. And basically what that means is either as a latching function or as a momentary hold, you can doubly delay speed, which in memory lane junior mode is going to just kind of have the delay time with no pitch shift, but in vintage modes will allow you to get that kind of octave up, octave down pitch swing that is very in vogue these days. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change via startup configuration the behavior of that right foot switch. I don't want it to be latching. I just want it to be a momentary hold for pitch jumps. So we're going to press and hold the right foot switch while we apply power to the memory lane, and we'll make the appropriate change so that we can use it as a momentary switch for pitch jumps. Let's go ahead and implement that now. Okay, so now that we've cycled power and changed the behavior of that right foot switch, you can see when we press and hold, it will change to marqueing through the three colors to indicate that we are in halftime mode or double mode. And when we let go, it will drop back to normal tap tempo operation. So let's give ourselves a really obvious kind of sound sample to use for that. We're going to go ahead and go super long delay time and long regeneration for that kind of like big, long music bed kind of thing.